Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to take place in the 44th chapter of the book of Isaiah. We're going to span the ranges of the 6th to the 20th verse. Herein we read of the folly and the irrationality of idolatry. So we also know it's immoral, we also know it's iniquitous, but it's really irrational for reasons that are explained by Isaiah. But what comes before it is sort of the theme of the victory that comes from those who belong to Yahweh. And it really begins in the 14th verse of the 43rd chapter all the way up to the 5th before the mark we're going to take off our lesson itself. And the first verse we want to read is the 15th verse of the 43rd chapter. I am Yahweh, your sacred one, creator of Israel, your king. So this foundation, his superlative uniqueness, his unduplicatable, unprecedented uniqueness and power and everything else, the creator of it, not only Israel, but the whole world, and he was king unto Israel, is going to form the foundation for the contrast between him and the idols who are inferior in every way, shape, and form in the passage we're going to cover today. Verses 18 and 19, do not remember the former, nor consider that of the old. See, I am doing what is new. Let it now spring forth. Do you not know it? I am even making a way in the wilderness, and rivers in the desert. So we have two things, old and new, and he is eternal, but he does bring newness wherever he is in eternity, because remember, he is his omnipresence spans not only across the space dimension of the time-space continuum, but also the time. So he is everywhere at once. He is past, present, future, and always at once. He transcends time. He is eternal. He was in the beginning. He was from the beginning, and he was before the beginning. He brought the beginning into being, and he pre-exists the creation that he set in motion. So wherever he comes, that he can make new, but he is also of old. So he's both new and old all at the same time and all at once. Verses 21 and 22. This people I have formed for myself. Let them relate my praise. But you have not called me, O Jacob, for you have been wary of me, O Israel. So the people that he had formed and chosen for his cause, these were the chosen people of Israel, was to praise Yahweh to the Gentile nations and bring them into the fold, but this they did not do, and they eventually grew weary. They grew burdened by the pleasures of privileges of knowing Yahweh and his will. They became subsumed by the burden and neglected their evangelical ethos as first prescribed through the patriarch Abraham. I will bless you to bless all the nations, and them that bless you I will bless, and them that curse you I will curse. And we just want to read the second and the third verse of the 44th chapter before we take off on the lesson itself. These read, Thus said Yahweh, who made you and formed you from the womb, who helps you. Do not fear, O Jacob, my servant, and Jeshurun, who I have chosen. So because they are chosen, they need not fear. What do we read in Romans 8:22? Those who are called according to Elohim's purpose, everything will work out in the end for them. And it's just a reminder that Yahweh is the one who has us from the womb to the tomb. So he created us. He's going to guide us the whole way through this existence we call life. And eventually he's going to bring us back up onto him for an immortal existence in his presence. For I pour water on the thirsty and flood on the dry grounds. I pour my spirit on your seed and my blessing upon your offspring. So the Spirit is the greatest gift and the greatest blessing of all. It is likened to water and also floods. So that is just the experience of being so subsumed by the Spirit, which is likened into water, in that it just goes wherever it wants, and no one can really control it or contain it. But that he pours the Spirit on the seed and the offspring means that we are to invest in the generation that comes after us, because the cold, sober, unsentimental truth is the faith that we affirm and uphold is never more than one generation away from extinction. So we do have to pass. Now we're going to mark the actual lesson itself, be in the 6th verse. We're going to take it all the way to the 20th in the 44th chapter of the book of Isaiah. Thus said Yahweh, King of Israel, and his Redeemer, Yahweh of hosts, I am the first and I am the last. Besides me there is no Elohim. So the author of this expression is Yahweh himself. This is not Isaiah. He is recording. He is privy to Yahweh's own declarations, and he acknowledges as the king of the Israelites and the Redeemer. He's the one who had redeemed and ransomed their ancestors from bondage in Egypt, and now he was redeeming Israel to salvation. Yahweh of hosts is his military name. So he is a fighter, and he's a powerful enemy to have on your side. A powerful ally, rather, and a friend to have on your side in spiritual warfare. And he is the first and the last. He is the Alpha and the Omega. He was before the beginning. He was from the beginning. And he was in the beginning and was before the beginning. And he's going to be there all the way in the end, from the womb to the tomb of your life, and also from the beginning and of the beginning and the end of eternity. Yahweh has it all under control. It's all in his hands. And the beast said, there is no other Elohim outside of him. This is a unique station and prerogative of, so all these idolatrous edifices were not really gods. They were merely figments of wood that the prophet debases them to. And who is like me? Let him call and declare it, and lay it before me, since I appointed the everlasting people, and the events that are coming, and those that do come. Let them declare these to them. So he's issuing a challenge to any competitor, any idol, any other god of any foreign nation, to stand before him and honestly challenge that who can do the things that he can do, who is the one under control, who is the one who is sovereign, who is the one who is supremely strong, omnipotent, which is the attribute of infinite or unlimited strength. So before him, none of these idols can even hear, because they don't have ears. They build ears, but they do not hear. They build mouths, but they do not talk. And much of what we read here corresponds to and supplements that which we read of in the 115th Psalm. And I did one of that probably over a year ago. It's entitled Corey Johnston Psalm 115, an intellectual indictment of idolatry. And remember, one of the things that Isaiah is communicating is not only the immorality of idols, but the irrationality of it, and he does that by introducing Elohim in the first 3 verses, his claims for supremacy, his reasonable and rational demand for exclusivity of worship. Do not fear, nor be afraid. Have I not since made you hear and declared it? You are my witnesses. Is there an Eloah besides me? There is no other rock. I know not one. So he's telling them not to be afraid, but to have faith, because faith is the opposite of fear. And inasmuch as he is the one who created them and formed them and brought them into being, he is also the one who enables them to hear. And this is spiritual hearing, not necessarily physical. We physically ingest the words, and it produces spiritual transformation inside of us. But witnesses was the role that Israel was called to fulfill and called to endure. They are to witness to the world all around them of Yahweh, their Elohim, and there was none beside him, and the rock is metaphorical and symbolic of their source of strength and refuge, and he's telling him he knows not one, and it takes one to know one. When one is Elohim, Yahweh only acknowledges the Son, Yahshua, and the Spirit, the Ruach Kadesh, as his equals. Those who make an idol, all of them are emptiness, and their delights do not profit, and they are their own witnesses. They neither see nor know, so that they are put to shame. So those who form idols become what they make, and idols are empty, they are vanity, they are the figments of an imagination, and those who make them become like them. And there is, there's some financial profit in casting silver and gold idols and edifices. There is money in that, but there's no eternal or spiritual profit or moral profit to bowing down to idols. And the only one who can witness of their miracles and their powers are the fabricators of his divine power. They've neither seen nor known, and this should be a cause for shame, but many of the prophets and people in the Gentile nations made a killer living on preaching and prophesying on these false erroneous deities. Who would form a mighty one or cast an idol that is of no value? The obvious answer is one who does not know any better. So the origin of idolatry as hypothesized by Paul in Romans 1:18-32 is that they have a witness of a creation all around them, so they are without excuse for acknowledging and affirming the singular created, yet they concoct idols in their imagination because they are been given up and gone astray to their own lust. And Yahweh just says, I give them up 3 times in that passage. And they are endorsing and investing in that which has no value, save the own deranged whimsies of their perverted imaginations, which concocts an idol in the reverse formula of which we were made. We were made in the image of Elohim. Idols are made in the image of man, and crocodiles, and 4-footed beast, and beast of the earth. They're just animals, degraded likenesses. See, all his companions are ashamed, and the workmen, they are but men. Let them all be gathered together. Let them stand up. Let them fear. Let them be put to shame altogether. So this shame is contagious, so it extends not only to the one who makes the idol, but the one who worship and submit and bow and kneel before the idols. They have cause to be ashamed. And the ones who make these idols are mere men, mere mortals, but Yahweh could not be depicted in physical likeness or material carnal representation because he is a purely spiritative being. He is the invisible mover and creator of everything that is visible. Read of in places such as Colossians 1:15. And, he wants them to be afraid, and he wants them to have shame for what they have done, because they have bowed and submit to a tangibly inferior power than the supreme and sovereign one, who by right commands and demands exclusivity of worship. The craftsman in iron with the tools works one in the coals, and fashions it with hammers, and works it with the strength of his arms. Even so he shall be hungry, and he has no strength. He drinks no water, and is weary. So the humans who made them are fatigable beings. They get tired, they get thirsty, they get hungry, and they have more life in them than the idols they craft and concoct through artistic deduction, be it spiritual, just making all their time and investing all they can with the labor behind making the idols, but their only metaphysical substance exists in people's imagination, so they see the image of that God, and it triggers an irrational impulse in them that this piece of wood, this piece of clay, this piece of gold, this piece of silver, this piece of earth is God himself, and we must appease it and bow down to it. So the image becomes the worship vehicle of the God itself, if not actually the God itself. The carpenter stretch out his rule, and he outlines it with chalk. He fashions it with the plane, and he outlines it with the compass, and makes it like the figure of a man, according to the comeliness of a man, to remain in the house. So therein we witness the reversal of the creative operation that I earlier mentioned, that we are made in the image of Elohim, Genesis 1:26, 28, also 5:1. I think the likeness is there, but idols are made in the image of man. They are calculated and created and concocted in accordance to the physical frame and proportions of man, as we read in this specific instance. No two idols are exactly the same. Some of them have features of crocodiles or reptiles or beasts or carnivores or anything else, lions, cats, whatever, but they're all really just physical material. Their only metaphysical substance doesn't really exist except in the deranged, passionate imaginations of those who worship them. He cuts down cedars for himself, and takes cypress and oak, which he raised among the trees of the wood. He has planted a pine, and the rain nourishes it. So this is the origin of idols. They come from wood, they come from the earth, something which grows on the earth, something which comes from the earth. And the cypress were prolific throughout, and cedars were prolific throughout the northern nation of the promised land of Israel. This was Lebanon, alternately known as, and self-referred to as Phoenicia in the ancient world. And it shall be for a man to burn, for he takes some of it and warms himself. He also kindles it, and shall bake bread. He also makes a mighty one, and bows himself to it. He made it a carved image, and falls down before it. So from the same item, the same material that he is burning himself, just to keep the fire alive at nighttime and warm oneself, and also to bake bread. But, the same material you're worshiping and exalting as the same thing as the giver of gifts, when that gift is but a gift of him and not the giver himself. And that just creates a whole host of difficulties, just equating that which is necessary for your natural or physical survival with the very substance that is the one that is sustaining your spiritual survival. That is immoral and it is irrational. Half of it shall burn in the fire, with half he eats meat. He roasts a roast and is satisfied. He also warms himself and says, Aha, I am warm. I have seen the fire. So again, this same equality between that which a man burns to keep himself alive, he is also exalting as divinity itself by bowing down to the physical edifice of the same wood that he burns in fire. He also treats and he divinizes, makes it divine, the same thing that he would otherwise, in alternate situations, want to burn for refuse. And the rest of it he makes into a mighty one, his carved image. He falls down before it and worships, prays to it, and says, Deliver me, for you are my mighty one. So that which he doesn't discard in the fire and allow to burn, he exalts into a transcendent vehicle of a deity to whom he can fall down and acknowledge and worship and pray to it. He is, in effect, their substitute God for Elohim, who is the one, the true, the only means of positive spiritual sustenance and nourishment. And they actually pray for salvation, and they put superstitious faith into these objects and these edifices that they actually have the power to deliver them when they are made of their own fingers and made in their own image and made in their own minds. They do not know nor understand, for he has smeared their eyes from seeing, and their hearts from understanding. So the spiritual blindness, I personally interpret this as being satanically induced. Satan has blinded the minds of an entire generation, read somewhere in the book of Ephesians, and it is from him that he sows the doubt, which leads unto confusion, and that leads to a lack of understanding or knowledge, and he has smeared their eyes from seeing and their hearts from understanding. And one of the principles I want to communicate is the eye will not see, nor the ear will not hear. That which is the heart is unable, unwilling, or unprepared to absorb and comprehend. And no one recalls it to his heart, nor is there any knowledge nor understanding to say, I have burned half of it in the fire, and I have also baked bread on its coals. I have roasted meat and eaten it. And shall I make the rest of it an abomination? Should I fall down before a log of wood? So these are questions that any owner or cutter or burner of wood would ask themselves. They have their options here. They've they've burned it half in the fire. This is necessary to stay alive and stay warm at night. The ancients had no heated homes such as we know and enjoy. They would have lived and revolved and survived around fires, the physical fires, to stay themselves warm. And they could also use it to bake bread. This was their daily vital. Daily bread was their daily meal, so bread was likened to food. Even though it was only a form of food, it was likened to food itself. And roasted meat and eaten it. And what's the rest that he should do of an abomination? And so it is abominable to treat the wood of the earth and the wood of trees as Elohim himself. It is abominable to bow down, to pray, to worship, to subscribe any strength or magic or anything else to these pieces of wood. 20th and final verse. Feeding on ashes, a deceived heart turns him aside, and he does not deliver his soul, nor says, is there not a lie in my right hand? So if you invest in idolatry, you are feeding on ashes. You will consume the ashes of destruction and devastation, of ruin, by following the whimsies of your own deceived and damaged heart. This brings to mind Jeremiah 17:9 and Yahweh's diagnosis of the human heart. It is three things. It is deceitful, so the deception is from the self. It is desperately wicked, and it is incomprehensible. Who can understand it? And there is a way that seems right unto man, but the end of the way is death. So that turns us aside from the path of life, the path of understanding, and it cannot save our soul. And the bottom line is idolatry is not only irrational but immoral. So these substances, these figments of other people's deranged imaginations, have no metaphysical or substance or moral quality save that which the worshippers prescribe to them. But that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Stay tuned until next time. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.